Okay, I've got the name. I've just been writing it all out. And the very last one is the one, ding, 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 Confessions of a Demon Slayer. Or The Confessions of a Demon Slayer. You know how in Morkamindi, at the end of every episode, he used to have to report back to his council of elders, to his boss, because he was an alien, and at the end of every episode, he had to report back about what he'd learnt about human behaviour. She's going to do the same thing, but she has to report back to her auntie and uncle, who may or may not be her real aunt and uncle. But in the show, people are going to think they're her aunt and uncle. But they're like her assessors, because we all have guardians and teachers and that, you know, when we're learning to do what we do. My first teacher was my sister Marion. Well, technically my first teachers was my parents and my auntie Elaine. But by the time I was a teenager, 14, 15, 16, stepping into my gifts and abilities, my eldest sister took over, and she's the one that got me to choose my cards and find my spread and all that sort of thing. And then my teacher Pauline came along, you know, Pauline Wardell Braddon, and she's the one that taught me about the prophecy. You know, prepared me when my sister, my mum and dad and my auntie Elaine prepared me for when I was a child. My sister Marion was my teacher when I was a teenager, and in my 20s it was Pauline, and then I was kind of left to my own devices. um, and sort of had to learn and make all these mistakes on my own. But then obviously in my 40s is when I started going through my ascension. That's when I went through my ascension process, and I'm just coming into land now, having finished my ascension, which is why I'm allowed to have access to so much of the supernatural norms now. I've earned the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. I've earned the keys to my physics. I've proven that I can be trusted with it, and that I don't use my gifts and abilities to punish people who don't necessarily deserve it. Like, you know, like my ex best friend Jose, right? Even though he did what he did and he got involved in what he did, I was able to put emotions aside and recognize that he was innocently pulled into it. He had been lied to and had been innocently pulled into it. The same thing with King Charles and Vladimir Putin. All three of them were innocently pulled into it, and so they went along with what they thought was the truth, not realizing that the truth had been manipulated. So they were innocent, therefore they don't have to, they won't face karma, so to speak, because they thought they were doing the right thing. They thought they were in the right. They thought they were on the good side. Their heart thought they were on the good side, not realizing that the dark side had manipulated the way they saw the light, sort of thing. So it's all been all been part of my training, and I could have I could have jumped in and used my sword and gotten into trouble for myself. Because if I take the wrong person down, it comes back on me, because I should have known better. So that's why I keep saying, don't feel sorry for me with what I went through, because it was all part of my training. I had to fine tune my intuition to align with my instincts in order to know when to wield my sword and when not to, and who to use it on and who not to use it on. So that's why I said I won't hold Jose accountable, because he didn't know what he was getting himself into. He thought he was helping the good guys bring the bad guys down, which is exactly what the King and Vladimir Putin thought. They thought that they were working with the good guys to bring the bad guy down, not realizing that the the bad guys were pretending to be the good guys. So that's why they won't get karma. That their fate now is up to God. That, you know, their path, God is the one that lays their path. There is no bounties on their head, therefore I don't need to collect them, right? So at the end of every remember I was saying in the last live about how she has, like, it, because like we all have an assessor, we all have someone who walks alongside us to make sure that we train and learn the right way, even when we're kicked out of the nest and have to learn how to fly on our own. We still have people, the right kind of people, watching over us to make sure that our ego is in check, that our pride is healthy, that we don't use vengeance on a personal scale. You have to understand that if someone does you wrong, if they're not someone who has a bounty on their head, leave it to God, because most people will use vengeance and retribution and all that in order to get justice for themselves. But when you're a bounty hunter, when you're a soul collector, there is a divine order, and the universal laws of karma are very, very strict because they're written by Satan. And this is what I keep saying. Satan is the one who writes the laws of the universe. He's the one who writes every single law that dictates what we're supposed to do in order to make sure we never end up where he is. If you want to avoid hell, this is what you need to do, and this is what you need to not do, right? Which is why the Dear Satan cause. That's why Hell for Leather going after Donald Trump and all of that, who stole my movie, Paramount Plus. They stole a movie that is to teach people about the real laws of karma, and they turned it into some whimsical farce with some incompetent buffoon who doesn't know the first thing about the laws of karma. Like, they took my movie that's supposed to be teaching children about the virtues of keeping an honest, pure heart, and avoiding the vices and stuff, and they stole it from me and turned it into a joke. And so that's why God's coming after them. And when I take them to court, they'll get eaten alive. They're going to have to pay me a lot of money for stealing my copyright. And I found out that even though it's Paramount Plus that made the movie, I can sue them, and I can sue Jared Kushner and Donald Trump and all of that gave them the idea to make the movie. But if there's anyone, say like Hulu or Amazon, who then play that movie on their streaming services, I can sue them as well. So I should get quite a bit of money. But they took something that was written, even though it's a kids animated series and there's going to be a lot of laughs in it, and that the way that it's written, you won't forget the story to that movie. And from what little I saw of what they made, I'm embarrassed for them. The good thing is that the backlash came, and there was a lot of backlash that came from that movie being made. So they went first, and then I can come along and say they stole that movie from me. And this is the true story, and people will be like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, because in the time of them stealing the movie to right now, this very second of me making this TV show, people are now understanding where I'm coming from with what it is I'm trying to teach about divine law and order. They're finally getting it. And so when that movie gets removed and destroyed and burnt on the studio floor, and they have to pay for stealing my movie, when I get to remake it, it will be told the correct way, because you see the good side of Satan in it and the scary side because of the way I've written it. I know how to talk to children. They don't. They abuse children. They hurt children. They mess with children's heads. And the way they wrote it, they received backlash. The way I write, people are following me because what I say makes sense. And I'm able to talk to children in a way that helps them fight their inner demons and helps them understand divine law and order in a way that doesn't hurt or punish them or make them feel like there's anything wrong with them, or where they're blaming themselves for unfair judgments and that sort of thing. I speak the language of child. So what they did, they broke the universal laws of karma. They stole from God. They stole inspiration. They stole divine inspiration and turned it into greed. So now they're all going to pay for it. So, you know, I could be jumping up and down and all of that. But I decided, once I got legal advice, I decided to just leave it and let time sit on it, because God would bring me justice in a way that's bigger than me just, you know, charging at them with a lawyer. So I've just sat and worked on other things. So that's part of the training, is that you have to learn when to act and when to sit back, right? And so this is going to be at the end of every show. She's going to sit and talk to her assessors. We'll finish every scene with her sitting at the table, talking with her assessors about, this is what happened, this is what I learned, this is blah, 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 blah. And the thing is, you know, she's going to make friends, she's going to have boyfriends. There's going to be people around her that she really likes who end up, you know, getting a bounty on their head. So she's going to have to deal with all the emotional ups and downs of all that as well. And then the other thing I was thinking, because I'm thinking of my son Thomas, because he's a Capricorn, right? He's ruled by Saturn. And they rule draconian law. Capricorns rule Satan's law. And they're sticklers for the law. Capricorn's like a Capricorn who what I say, Capricorn in the upright, you know, they're the devil in the tarot card. They are sticklers for sticking to the law. They do not like injustice. That's because they're ruled by Satan. So she's going to have like a best friend, I'm thinking like a boy best friend who has horns on his head. She sees him as a demon. She knows he's a demon, but he's a demon on the good side of, like, he doesn't have a bounty on his head because he's one of the ones that works directly with your grandpa. Because there are some devils that work directly with Satan, whose job it is to lure people who are tempted to sign their souls over. They kind of expose the sin, or they expose the demon inside the man or woman. You know what I mean? There are some very, you know, that work like Satan's generals, and he could be Satan's general disguised as like a teenage boy, and every now and then he'll jump in on the battles with her, and you know, and that's what I was thinking, because my son Thomas. So I'm going to base the character around my son Thomas, because he's helped me. I mean, he's the one that helped me start my whole Halloween haunted house theme ideas, and you know, he helped me write The Night of the Black Sun. When it comes to horror and darkness and, you know, the spookies and all that sort of thing, he's just like my right hand. And so I thought, well, why not give Ruby like a boy best friend? And he has like little horns on his head that no one can see, but she can see, because nobody can see that they're around demons. And the town they're going to live in is called Demonville, but it's going to be pronounced, it's going to be spelled DH, and they're going to say, no, it's Demonville. You come from Demonville? I live in Demonville. No, it's Demonville. You know, like Hyacinth Bouquet. She refused to have the name Bucket, so she told everyone it was pronounced Bouquet. So, yeah, so she's going to have like a male best friend sidekick who's a demon. And demons have no sex. I don't know if you know that. They don't have sex organs. They're neither male nor female. So, yeah, the ones that work with Satan, you know what I'm saying. So I need to come up with a name for him, but yeah, he'll kind of be like her sidekick. He'll maybe turn up mid series or something, and he'll turn up every now and then. They'll have to do things together. I'm thinking he might be a little bit older than her. So, you know, if she's like, say, 15, 16, he might be 17, 18. He might be getting ready to go to college, or he might be someone that, you know, works somewhere in the town, or so he might not be in every single episode, but he will be there when they have to do the big demon battles and stuff. You see? So, yeah, so I need a name for him. And so, yeah, she's going to live in Demonville. And the name of the show is going to be Confessions of a Demon Slayer, or The Confessions of a Demon Slayer. Confessions. What sounds better? The confession. I think Confessions of a Demon Slayer. And at the end of every episode, she'll sit and she'll report back to her auntie and uncle, quote unquote. There's bound to be two-parters, but yeah, at the end of every episode, she has to sit at the table and report back. And there'll be times where every now and then certain things will happen where the aunt and uncle have to intervene, and the Ministry of Souls, the MSPD, have to step in, and so the main part about being a demon slayer, a bounty hunter for the Ministry of Souls, is trusting fine-tuning your intuition and aligning it perfectly with your instincts, because it comes back on you as karma if you take the wrong person down. And even though things might get personal, like, with me losing my best friend and everything, losing potential love interests and all of that sort of thing, because they chose the wrong path, even though I could have made it personal, I didn't. Because there's a lot of people out there that I'm up against, like Donald Trump, for example, and Elon Musk, who are petty, and they take it out on innocent people. They seek retribution and punishment and vengeance because of their not having their pride and ego in check, and so they become petty, but that comes back on them. That's why their lives are falling apart, because it's karmic retribution for everything they've done against innocent people. And because I've come along and whistleblowing and, pulled the veil back so that people are seeing the truth of who they are, this is now when karmic retribution comes in, and they're starting to feel the fallout of karmic justice because now God stepped in. Same with Starmer and all that. But I could have called Vladimir Putin and King Charles and like Jose and all that out, but I chose not to, because I understood that they were fed lies to help them make up their mind so that they couldn't see the truth of what they were dealing with. They blinded them to the light, so they thought that the darkness was the light and the light was darkness, and that's not their fault. Same with my boys, with everything. I would never, ever, my boys would never, ever be a bounty, ever. But they wanted me to see them as the enemy. And I refused to do it because I raised my boys and I know who they are. They wanted to start personal wars. And if my ego and pride wasn't in check, if I didn't have my intuition and instincts perfectly aligned, I could very well have gone to war with innocent people. Do you see what I mean? So these are all stories. These are all like moral issues that she's going to have to deal with growing up in Demonville, while she's learning how to be a bounty hunter. Pretty cool, eh? It's like, holy heck. This might be my favourite TV show. I might actually watch this TV show. See, my TV lineup for my little streaming service, we might only be one channel, but the stuff that's coming off that channel is going to be epic. And it's for people who are wanting to learn about the world that they're living in a way that they never thought existed, or if they knew it existed, they didn't understand it properly. That's going to open their whole world up to how you see vices and virtues, humanity, the good and bad in everyone, the supernatural, the paranormal, the divine process, evolution, all of it, but told through the ascension process, the descension process, ascension psychosis, descension psychosis, which will be a lot in this TV show. They just didn't know the names. They didn't understand the process because they were being lied to about what it was, about the world that we were living in. And when I come along with all my shows and movies and video games and books and my foundation when we open the gates and let everyone in, the way I present it all, they're not even going to realise they're learning. They'll just remember, because I'm everything I write is unforgettable, because I make people think and they're like, well, that's an interesting way to see it. Oh, I never thought of it like that. Well, that makes sense. Oh, so that's why that happened. You know what? She's bloody right. I did what she said and it worked. That sort of thing. So then they keep watching and then they keep listening and they keep following, and and then they're learning from me, and they're starting to realise that it's making their lives better and it's bringing peace to their lives. I'm getting feedback from people saying, everything you say and do has brought so much peace to my life now. I finally know who I am. Do you know how beautiful that is, to be told by complete strangers that you've brought them peace, and that they're learning who they are and they know who they are now, and that they can't stop smiling and they're happier and they're making better choices because I've come along and shone a light in their darkness, and they're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and they're finally getting it. I've had people say to me, I was ready to give up, I was getting ready to give up, and you came along and you saved me. And now I want to live, and now I want to have adventures, and I want to see what's out there. Do you know, well, firstly, how much power I have over people just through what I say, that it's making that kind of difference? That's why the doctors hated me in the hospital, because I was doing the same things with the girls and even some of the nurses that I was locked up with, and I was turning their lives around in little ways that the medication and the shrinks and that could never do, and so they hated me and they came after me for it. But to have that kind of power over someone's life, where you can just say something or be someone, or be the leader that they need, or the influence they need that changes their whole perspective on life, do you know how beautiful that is? Can you see why I'm fighting so hard to create that kind of world for children? Because if I can do that with adults, and adults are the ones whose minds are hardest to change, because they're usually set in their ways by the time they get to their 30s and 40s, let alone 50s, 60s, 70s. But to be able to come along and wave a magic wand and go bibbity bobbity boop, and then their whole world opens up and they're like, whoa, I never thought of it like that. And then suddenly all that childhood pain washes away. This is what she's going to be dealing with. She's going to be dealing with teenagers in that show whose demons are childhood wounds. They came from abusive households. They came from divorce. They came from mum or dad being shipped off to war and, not knowing if they're coming back. I know what that's like personally. I've lived that hell. That's why I didn't want my boys joining the military, because I know what it's like to ship your loved ones off to the military and not know if you're going to come back. Because I was little when Uncle Johnny died, and that trauma has lived with me my whole life. Is that going to happen to my dad? That's a PTSD that stuck with me my entire life. I must have been about 6 or 7 when Uncle Johnny died. And so I've carried that with me my whole life. And if you're a military kid, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. And some of the kids in this show are going to be military kids. There might be a military base up the road or something in the show, I don't know. But I'll be able to write all these things into it where the kids watching it, where people watching it will be able to go, huh. So it's going to be just like all those shows I mentioned, but we're at the end of it. She's going to explain the process to her aunt and uncle. And they might be her real aunt and uncle, I don't know. I haven't decided yet. But they're going to be there to look after her, because if Hades walked the earth, people would shit themselves. But he might pop up every now and then. to come and see her because he's hysterically obsessed with his little girl. He's so protective of her. But every now and then you will see Hades and Persephone, but I just don't know how often Hades will pop up. It depends on how I want to present him in the show, but you will see him. I just don't know how often he'll roam, come Turfside. Same with Satan. But it is going to happen in the shows eventually. If we get good ratings and we get good feedback and all of that, and the ratings are good, then obviously we'll keep making shows. And like I said, we can take this the whole way. Where once she graduates from high school, she goes into, her PD training, and then we can turn that into like our version of the X-Files, the Bounty Hunter Files, or the Soul Collector Files, where she's actually on the job, starting out as a cop, then she graduates to detective, and then, well, you've seen the work that I do with unsolved murders and serial killers and all that. That would be the premise of the show. If you scroll down to the very beginning of my Instagram, you'll see I was starting to work on it then. I wrote like this whole because Ruby keeps a diary, and she was writing about how her daddy was scared for her when she was hunting a serial killer, and he was trying to get her to take Trixie, this Cerberus, with her to be like her police dog, but Trixie's like a three-headed demon dog, and she was like, I can't. He's trying to give Trixie a better public image, so he puts like a pink bow on her heads. And like a fluffy collar and all that sort of thing, but it's secretly because he's wanting to know that she's got that protection, even though she's like this supernatural demon slaying, working for God and Satan, angel demon kind of, no mortal man can defeat her sort of thing. He just sees her as his little princess who needs protection. So yeah, like I said, if the ratings are good and it gets a following like Supernatural and Charmed and that did, then by the time the high school years come to an end, we can take that straight into like our version of the X-Files, and then I can work on real cases that I've worked on. Then I can bring up real stories that I worked on. But we should go back in the past, like so to the Black Dahlia murder, she'd have to go back, to 1930s, 1940s Hollywood. So we'd get to mess around with the sets and, like with the Delphi murders, obviously I'd have to get permission from the parents. But I'm just using it as an example. I'm not saying I'd use, there's some I would work on, some I wouldn't work on into the show. Because obviously I need to be case sensitive, because there's a lot of cases that I've worked on that, have been where they've happened within the last 20 years, where, families are still alive and that sort of thing. But you get what I'm saying. You know what I mean. And it can be a likeness, based on a true story, or, made up but kind of similar to, but where she steps back in time. And then I get to bring in characters like Theo Lazarus, who's the private eye for the Ministry of Souls. But he works in, what do you call it? I know there's a organised crime. He works for the organised crime department, and TC Draco and the Wolfman work in music and movies, the music and movie industry department. And she works on cold cases. So they all, work for different departments and that. So, yeah, so, oh my God, this is so exciting. So, Confessions of a Demon Slayer. So that's it, all because I got inspired by one little thing someone said. Oh my God, I can't wait. Come on, let's do it. Let's get out of here and do this. Let's get it made. She could be, depending on where I live as well, she could be Italian. She could be Greek, as long as she's got olive skin and dark hair. So, yeah, so here we go. I mean, technically, would she not be Greek? But anyway, you know what I mean. So it's out there. How exciting. I can't wait. Oh my God, get me out of here. I can't wait. Woohoo! I'll speak to you later. Ka kite. Mwah.